While doing some research and figuring out what the most played MMOs were, I found a few of them on the list surprising, but one of them really stuck out to me. Warframe is out here holding consistently 600 to 700,000 active players at any given time, and I just thought, what? Warframe, that game I downloaded for free on the PlayStation 4 back in 2014 and then never touched again, that Warframe? I'd kind of assumed this game had faded into obscurity over the years, but here it is, one of the most played live service games currently on the market. I mean, seriously though, 600 to 700,000 active players at any given time, that's enormous. So of course, my curiosity got the best of me, and I had to see what this game was all about for myself. And now a couple of things to note. This game is free. I haven't paid $1 for this game. I have downloaded it and I'm playing it and I'm just trying it out. Number two, this is not a full game review. This is just like a first impressions, whether or not I think this game is worth starting up for most players and whether or not I think it'll actually be able to retain them long term. And number three, so once we're into the game and get past what is actually a pretty slick cinematic, we get to choose what seems like a class. And okay, good, monkey brain happy, me like RPG, me like choosing class. This good. And we get our three choices: Excalibur, Mag, and Volt. And of course I choose Volt because it's clearly the coolest. I mean, look at this guy. He's doing Force Lightning. Of course I'm going to choose it. And right away, the first thing that I was really impressed by with Warframe, and I think anyone would be when they download it, is the game looks amazing. Like when I first booted it up, I was like, this game is free. Like this does not look like any game that I've ever played that's free before. Usually they're kind of cartoony, a little more clunky. This game is buttery smooth and looks amazing. The texture and the terrain, the detail on the armor and the weapons, the shadows, the lighting, the effects, just it all looks really, really good. And I mean, I know graphics will only carry a game so far, but when they look this good, it sure as hell helps. It feels like I'm playing a AAA game that I would have paid $60 for just to play a campaign that looks like this. Like no joke. When it comes to graphics, you know, the look and the feel of the world, it's really killer in Warframe. Well done. But let's get into the stuff that really matters, and that is the gameplay. Now, when I first re-downloaded Warframe, I assumed it was going to be a bit of a shooter-looter kind of game where you're going to be killing different mobs, getting drops from them, things like that. Kind of similar to what I expect the Destiny gameplay system to be like, but I've never played Destiny, so what the hell do I know? But this game definitely has much more of an emphasis on the shooter rather than the looter. But to Warframe's credit, the shooting and the feeling, the reactiveness, the input you get, it is so good. Like they really killed it. I'm not a big shooter player. Like I'm really not, I'll admit it. I'll hop into a game of Apex Legends with the boys sometimes. That's about it. But with Warframe, it feels like it gives you everything you need within combat to make you feel satisfied with that shooting gameplay you're getting. The importance of the aim and the feedback from headshots, being able to actually shoot things. Like, you know, in some games when they're just kind of peeking around the corner a little bit and you shoot that part of their body that's hanging out and it doesn't actually register. If you see any part of an enemy, the hitbox is just perfect. Like if you can see them and you're aiming at it and you hit it, they're going to take damage. There's also some class specific abilities that you can do. As the Volt, I can pretty much shoot out like a chain lightning kind of thing that for the most part one shot seemingly anything it touches. And embarrassingly enough, there is apparently also like 3 other abilities I didn't even know existed and that you could actually scroll through and use. I pretty much figured this out a couple hours in. For instance, one that speeds me up by a ton, one that puts up a shield. I'm an idiot. I wish I'd known about these sooner. But yeah, as a whole, the shooting, the abilities, it all feels really smooth and seamless and reactive. It feels good. I can't think of anything to complain about there. Well done. And now let's talk about the real reason that everyone plays this game. And I quickly figured it out. The movement, man. The movement in this game is ridiculous. I mean, hell, even when just doing research about this game, I looked up on Reddit, you know, why do people play Warframe? And a lot of the answers came down to the movement. And I just thought to myself, sure, I mean, shooting can make a game really good, but how can movement be that much of a factor? And it wasn't until I started playing it that I realized, oh, now I get it. The movement just feels like you're some jacked up assassin on meth, just flying all over the place. But at the same time, it's just so smooth and controlled, and there's different combinations you can do to do different movements and get to different areas. All while doing this, you can shoot and still be in combat and use your melee, do your shots. It feels amazing. The movement both looks and feels great, and you just wonder why other games haven't, you know, implemented systems like this, because it's just so fun. It makes things feel so much more fast paced, and while there might not actually be that much going on that's that intense or cool, you still feel cool doing it. And the game definitely knows this is one of its strengths too and plays to it, because it introduces it very quickly when you're in your kind of tutorial area, and it's kind of just like, hey, check this out, make sure you know how to do it. Isn't that cool? And for the most part, when it comes to the actual gameplay of the game, it feels like I'm almost just playing a faster, more modernized version of like a Halo game, and I mean that in a good way. You pretty much just choose from your hub which site you want to go to, which level you want to experience to further progress either the campaign or just level yourself up. From there, you're going to kind of follow the objectives through the map, completing things as you go, killing enemies, traversing the terrain, doing the objectives, solving puzzles. Oh, and also the puzzles. I actually really enjoy this. I enjoy puzzles in games. I think this is like an underutilized aspect of games. Just little systems where you need to turn off the security or do this and that. You need to rearrange things. Just little puzzles that are fun. It kind of is a break from the action, but in a way that's stimulating in a different way. Like it makes you think. And generally these are timed, so it still has a little bit of like competitive edge to it where you need to be able able to figure this out pretty quickly. And overall, once you get into the thick of it and into the firefight, you kind of just, you know, get sucked in. You kind of forget what you're doing. You're just immersed in this Warframe world. And at least personally, a game that can really pull you in and feels immersive is a huge deal for me. Warframe also has a bunch of really nice personal progression systems, such as the mastery system, which is introduced pretty early on. Now, honestly, I have no idea what actually triggers these being available. I had mastery 1 and then I got mastery 2. I'm not sure what actually made it available to me, but it is pretty cool how they are different every time. For instance, the mastery 1 system just had me using my primary, whereas the mastery 2 had me using my secondary. From there, it became survive the endless horde using only what you're given, and you'll unlock some perks and it seems like equipment slots from completing these. I look forward to these getting a little bit more challenging and in-depth as the game goes on, because they're just a nice little test of skill and kind of a break away from doing just the missions. Another nice part of the game when you're first starting off is actually getting to the first like main player hub, at least for me, which was Cetus or Cetus. I'm not sure how you say it. And I always feel like it's good to be able to go into kind of an open world scenario in these games with other players, because you get to see what they're doing, you know, talk to them, interact with them, see their armor, maybe think, you know, how the hell do I get that? That looks amazing. And simply just by seeing the other players, it can kind of pique your interest for the game itself. It can also help new players realize, oh, there's actually a lot of people playing this game. Otherwise, when you're just kind of stuck on your ship, it feels like just a solo experience. But once you make it into this main hub, you're like, oh wow, this game is actually thriving. There's a lot of people here. This feels good. There's also a nice modification upgrade system for just your personal abilities, your guns, your weapons, just being able to manipulate your damage, your tankiness. And I like this because it does seem like you can actually vary the way you play quite a bit based upon how you want to upgrade your character. I'm not someone who likes to be put in a box when it comes to their gameplay and play style, so being able to modify it and upgrade it like this, I really like that. However, there's some things about Warframe that are definitely not super beginner friendly, and I struggled with them, and I'm sure others will as well. And the biggest thing that comes to mind right away is the fact that the game can just be a little bit overwhelming pretty quickly. Not so much in the sense of the gameplay is pretty straightforward, you know, just getting in, shooting, completing the mission, getting out, but more or less with what's happening on the ship itself and the systems associated with what goes on there. And now, to be fair, I don't think this is a Warframe specific problem. I think most long running live service games like Warframe pretty much all have this issue at this point. Most of them all kind of struggle with how to introduce new players to their game when it's been so long standing. And I think for a lot of people, including the developers of these games, it's just hard to put themselves in the shoes of a new player. They take a look at the modification upgrade systems UIs and just think, oh yeah, of course, exactly, everyone's gonna know how to use this. It's so simple. And with that, they leave little to no explanation on how to use it. So then when we as the new actual fresh players get there, we just think, you know, what's going on here? What am I supposed to do? And it's too bad that so many games struggle with this, because it's not to the fault of the actual gameplay. The gameplay can be amazing, and in Warframe it's really good. And to be fair, it wasn't enough in Warframe for me to just drop the game and think, yeah, I don't want to play this. However, for others, it definitely could be, and that's just too bad to lose players to something so simple. And just as a for instance, there was a symbol on the map when I was choosing a mission from the main mission table there in the ship, and I was thinking, I wonder what that means. And unfortunately, there was no explanation within the game that I could find to tell me what the hell this symbol meant. And not only that, but it was actually pretty hard to find like just a definitive list of these symbols. And then once I did, I realized, holy hell, there's like 100 of these symbols, probably more than that, and I have no idea what any of them mean. And so far as I can tell, there's nothing in game, especially for new players, to tell you what they mean. And I get it. I play World of Warcraft. I understand how long-term, long-running games can be super overwhelming to new players because they've just expanded off of themselves for years. And I like games with a lot to learn. I truly do, but I just want even a name associated with that symbol so I can then look it up quite easily. But when all I get is a symbol and a picture and I have to try and figure out what the hell that means through Google, it's not the easiest thing to do and not super efficient. While I'm learning all these menus and upgrade systems, I recognize, oh, I can actually switch out my gun. And as I go to see which guns I can switch out for, I recognize, oh, there's multiple currencies here, and instantly think, uh-oh, I know what that usually means. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Let's do a little bit of snooping around and see what we can find. So I click the currencies I see in the top right, and I don't know about y'all, but as soon as I see in-game currency purchasing options like these, it just takes me out of it. Not only that, but of course at the higher tiers, it looks like there is actually some available power systems unlocked, which even pushes it a little further for me. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think in-game shops are inherently a bad thing. I think in fact, they are almost a good thing for the general player as long as they are done well. In general, in-game shops just really have to do with the whales who will purchase anything, and a majority of players don't actually get affected by it. And as long as this can be used as a methodology to keep the cost for the general player down while still allowing the company to thrive and succeed, I don't think this is a bad thing. And I can't actually speak to the shop within Warframe because I don't know enough about how this game works and the guns you can buy with this currency versus others. Also a point, you can only buy certain guns with these premium currencies. I don't know if they're that much inherently better. I don't know enough about the game to tell yet, but I can tell you, you do get these modifications or upgrades here that do sound pretty powerful with the purchase. So overall, just a bit disappointing for me in that aspect. One last thing that I also noticed while playing that just seemed kind of questionable to me was Unless there's an actual objective where you are told you have to kill a specific amount of enemies or something, for the most part, it kind of just feels like I could just run past everyone and complete my objectives and get to the extraction point and like do a pacifist run. Now, I'm not sure if this is just because it's a few hours in and things are still relatively easy, difficulty turned all the way down or something like that for new players. Sometimes it feels like the NPCs for the most part aren't even actually a threat. They're just kind of there. Something I expect will probably change when it comes to the experience moving forward, but just something I know. If I just summarize overall, make a pros and cons list, on the pros, we would definitely have the graphics. The game just looks amazing. Like, it's the most impressive free game I've definitely ever played. After that, we would have the combat and the movement. Everything is just super fluid and flows. It feels really good. The feedback from the combat is really good, and the movement and just being able to get around in such unique ways, it's awesome. And then lastly, we'd have the crafting and the mod system. And though I kind of ripped on the UI being a little bit confusing, the actual systems themselves, once you get used to it, are definitely really good. And starting off the cons, we have to have the game is just a little bit overwhelming when you first get into it. You're not really sure how to operate the systems, the upgrades, just navigate the systems in the ship. The UI is just a little cluttered. So as a new player, it can just be quite a bit overwhelming. Next up, we have the cash shop, and I'm not sure how problematic this is actually going to end up being, but I'm not loving the way I'm seeing it implemented. And then lastly, sometimes the game feels a little bit aimless, like you don't really know what your directive is. You're kind of just going into these missions to do these missions just to kill stuff, all while still having that feeling like you're supposed to be doing a campaign, but you're not really sure why or what you're doing or what the hell is going on. And this can be kind of a frustrating experience for new players, so definitely worth mentioning. But overall, in the end, would I recommend new players trying out this game? I mean, just look at it. This game is free. Does this look like any free game you've ever played before? If you're looking for an action-packed multiplayer PvE shooter, then this is definitely going to scratch that itch. At the end of the day, if nothing else, it's a very good looking and fun to play shooter game that is free. I know I mentioned some negatives because every game has them and it's important to point them out. However, they definitely don't overtake the positive components of this game, and it's definitely worth trying out. And as for the cash app, I'm gonna be optimistic here and assume that it's not a pay to win game. It's just, you know, pay for things if you want them, and it doesn't actually affect too much of the gameplay. And that does overall seem to be the general sentiment of veteran players. I think it is rare to find a game that's free that actually plays this well, looks this good, and has a community that seemingly actually love its game. So it's not really surprised to me now that Warframe has become one of the biggest, most active live service games in the world. I appreciate you guys tuning in and sticking all the way till the end. You can catch me streaming over on Twitch. I'll leave that link down in the description. But until next time, guys, peace.